The mountain wind cut through Jacob's jacket like it wanted to turn him back, but he pushed forward, gripping Ethan's small hand as the forest deepened around them. The peaks towered like ancient watchers, sharper and colder than in the memories he carried from childhood. Every crunch of leaves beneath their boots echoed the long road behind them. Shelters, bus stations, restless nights on borrowed mattresses. All of it changed the moment the letter arrived at the shelter. A single page written in the shaky script of the grandmother he'd been told was dead. "Come back to the mountain. The house is waiting." Those 6 words pulled him through exhaustion and fear until the abandoned settlement finally emerged through the trees. Roofs sagged, stone walls crumbled, and the path twisted toward the top where the house leaned tiredly against the rock. Ethan stared in awe at the ruins, calling it a lost village, unaware of the ghosts his father felt tightening around him. Inside the old house, the air carried dust, wood smoke, and faint lavender, his grandmother's scent. But something was wrong, footprints in the dust. A chest left open, an envelope waiting like a heartbeat. As Jacob read the letter, fear gripped him. She hadn't died, she'd hidden, and someone dangerous had gotten here first. Before he could process the truth, a floorboard creaked behind him, and a stranger stepped into the doorway. Daniel stood with his palms open, rain-damp hair clinging to his forehead, the look of a man who had traveled far and suffered much. Jacob shielded Ethan instinctively, years of sleeping in dangerous places sharpening his response. But Daniel spoke Jacob's father's name with familiarity, the kind that carried both memory and regret. Slowly, his story unfolded. Jacob's great-grandfather had discovered a rare mineral vein deep beneath the mountain, a discovery valuable enough to ignite greed in powerful men. He filed claims and carved maps, believing the land should nourish families, not be stripped bare for profit. But others wanted it badly enough to take lives to get it. After the accident that killed him, those men turned on his widow. Jacob's father, terrified and grieving, fled the mountain and never looked back. To protect Jacob, he lied, burying his mother in false death so Jacob wouldn't return. Daniel's involvement ran deeper. He once worked for the company hunting the claims until guilt shattered his loyalty and he began secretly helping Jacob's grandmother survive. Crow, the man now hunting the mountain's secrets, had already taken what was inside the chest. The map was gone. Danger was close. "Your grandmother is alive," Daniel said quietly. "She's hiding in a cabin on the West Ridge. And she's been waiting for you." In that moment, Jacob understood the storm wasn't coming. It was already here. They left the old house under a darkening sky, Daniel leading the way through twisting trails marked by the carved symbol on the note, a circle with 3 branching lines. The forest thickened, night breathing between the trees as the lantern cast trembling halos of light. Ethan clung to Jacob's neck, silent but alert, watching the world change around him. The footbridge they crossed groaned under the weight of 3 lives trying to outrun danger, its boards swaying over the murmur of water far below. Daniel checked the shadows often, his movements sharp with old habit. The carved markers grew fresher the higher they climbed, proof that Jacob's grandmother had been here recently, carving hope into the bark. When the trees finally thinned into a small clearing, Jacob saw the soft glow spilling from a cabin door. His breath broke. He rushed inside, heart pounding with a hope so fierce it hurt. There, wrapped in a shawl beside a crackling fire, sat the woman he had mourned for years. Silver hair braided over her shoulder, posture frail, eyes soft and blue, eyes he had inherited. "Jacob," she whispered, voice fragile but unmistakably hers. He dropped to his knees, Ethan still in his arms, tears burning hot. Her trembling hand reached forward, touching his cheek with a gentleness he thought he'd lost forever. "My boy," she breathed, "you came home." And in that tiny cabin, surrounded by shadows and firelight, Jacob felt years of grief unravel. Her voice carried the weight of decades as she began telling the truth Jacob had been denied. The mineral vein his great-grandfather discovered wasn't just valuable. It was coveted enough to poison entire communities. Men from the valley and the city came offering contracts wrapped in lies. When he refused, accidents followed. Broken fences, slashed tires, missing equipment. The night he went to check the boundary markers was the night he never returned, and they called it a slip on wet rock. Jacob's grandmother had fought alone afterward, refusing every offer, every threat. But Jacob's father saw the danger and ran, believing escape was the only way to protect his son. He never understood that running could wound just as deeply as staying. She revealed how Daniel found her carrying guilt for once helping those men and how he risked everything to hide her when Crow started hunting again. Jacob listened with a tightness in his chest that felt like old scars reopening. Ethan sat quietly at his side, absorbing the history that had shaped the father he adored. "You were never abandoned," she whispered. "You were shielded." Her frail hand closed over Jacob's. "And now the burden is yours. Greed is circling again. But this time our family must decide what the mountain becomes." They returned to the old house together under a sky bruised with dusk. Inside, the grandmother moved slowly, touching the carved wooden mantel that Jacob had once ignored as meaningless grooves. Up close, the truth revealed itself. It wasn't decoration. It was a map etched into the heart of the house, marking rivers, ridges, and hidden boundaries. "He carved it so no one could steal it," she murmured. "Paper burns, wood remembers." At the hearth's base, her fingers pressed a loose stone, unlocking a hidden compartment. Inside lay the oil-wrapped documents Jacob's great-grandfather had protected, original claims, signatures, and a leather notebook filled with names, threats, and warnings written in careful, fearful handwriting. Jacob held the notebook reverently. It was more than evidence. It was the story of a man fighting to preserve something bigger than himself. His grandmother watched him with tired pride. "You know what poverty feels like," she whispered. "That means you understand what not to break." Daniel stood beside him, offering his knowledge of modern companies willing to work with integrity, ones that protected water, shared profit, and honored limits. "You won't face this alone," he said. Ethan traced the carved rivers on the mantel, learning the land through touch. Jacob understood the choice now: protect the mountain and its people, or surrender it to the same greed that destroyed his great-grandfather. And for the first time, the weight didn't feel like chains. It felt like purpose. The following days brought quiet transformation. Windows once clouded with dust were replaced with clear panes that let morning light spill across the floor. The patched roof no longer groaned under the wind. A donated rug warmed the coldest corner of the house. Daniel traveled constantly between the ridge and the valley, meeting conservation-minded companies and ensuring Jacob would never be blindsided. The sheriff visited often, making it clear that Crow's presence wouldn't go unchallenged. Even a wandering dog, scruffy, loyal, and instantly adored by Ethan, settled beside the porch as though claiming the house as its duty. Jacob spent afternoons splitting wood and evenings learning the details of mineral rights from the notebook. Every page revealed more of the legacy he inherited and the danger attached to it. His grandmother rested near the fire, frail but content, watching her lineage take root again. At night, when Ethan slept under her quilt with a wooden cross tucked into his hand, Jacob whispered thanks. For safety, for purpose, for a chance to rebuild after years of wandering. Crow remained a looming threat, but Jacob no longer felt like a man running. He felt like a man standing, a man choosing. The mountain hadn't softened, but he had found strength within its harshness. As the season shifted into colder nights, Jacob finally understood what his grandmother had prayed for. The inheritance was not wealth, it was stewardship. It was the responsibility to decide what this land would become for the generations that followed. One evening, after Ethan finished drawing another map of the ridge, Jacob sat at the table with the documents spread before him. The firelight flickered across the inked signatures, the hand-drawn boundaries, and the journal entries written decades earlier by a man fighting forces stronger than himself. Jacob bowed his head, feeling the weight of both the past and the possibilities ahead. His grandmother watched him through half-closed eyes, breathing softer now, her strength slipping but her peace undeniable. She placed her hand over his. "When the blessing comes," she whispered, "don't let it own you. Let it pass through your hands without taking your heart." Ethan curled against her side, listening as she reminded them both that protecting the land meant protecting the people who lived on it. That wealth was only good if it lifted others. That greed would always knock, but courage decided whether the door opened. And in that dim, warm room with Daniel reviewing the contracts and the dog sleeping at their feet, Jacob made his choice. The mountain would not be carved into ruin. It would be guarded with integrity. His grandfather's hope, his grandmother's endurance, and his own hard-earned humility woven into every decision. The final night settled quietly over the ridge, the house G, glowing with firelight as the wind carried a soft hush through the pines. Jacob stood by the mantel, tracing the carved ridges and valleys with steady fingers. He no longer saw the map as a secret or a burden. It was a promise. Ethan slept soundly under his great-grandmother's quilt. Daniel worked through paperwork by lantern glow, organizing what would soon become a partnership rooted in responsibility rather than greed. And the old woman who had carried decades of fear finally rested with a peace that softened every line on her face. Jacob whispered into the quiet, "Thank you for bringing us home, for giving us something to build instead of something to fear." He understood now that the real gift wasn't the land or its hidden wealth. It was the chance to rewrite the story, to break a cycle of running, to give Ethan a legacy that wasn't shaped by fear but by faith, courage, and purpose, and to protect a mountain that had protected his family for generations. To everyone listening, if this journey touched you, if you felt the climb, the reunion, or the redemption in this story, I invite you to support this channel. Like, comment, and subscribe so more stories can find the hearts that need them. And tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it where you are right now?